Leslie, thank you for being here today. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you about your leadership role in commercial real estate. In 2018, you were the first African-American woman named to lead a REIT in the country. You're a trailblazer in many ways, and I'd love for you to tell us about that career path and how you landed in your current role.
My career is really sort of filled with, having the opportunity to work at fabulous organizations like GE, Goldman Sachs, and RLJ. It's filled with, opportunities of taking risk and opportunities associated with having great mentors and sponsors. And the key ingredient for my career is really the mentors and sponsors, right? So people who were able to help me sort of see 3 steps ahead. And an example of that is, when I came to RLJ, within 6 months of joining the organization, my then boss came to me and said, "Hey, I think this job could lead to you being CFO." And I politely said, "No, thank you." And he looked at me very oddly and came back the next day and said, "Here's a list of CFOs who become CEOs." And I said, "Ooh, I should reconsider." And that's an example of the types of mentorship and sponsorship that I have had throughout my career, where people help me sort of see the opportunity by looking at it at different angles. And so I would say that my career at GE was fantastic from a learning growth perspective. Goldman Sachs gave me a very broad perspective. But at RLJ, I was able to use all of my background in various roles, working at small organizations. Your skills are used differently, but really the mentorship throughout my entire career is what's made the difference. But that decision to become CFO ultimately led me to where I am today, because by being CFO, I was able to get in front of the board. I was able to learn the business in a different angle, because all roads lead to the balance sheet. All roads lead through the numbers of how the business is doing and the strength and health of the company. And so that decision was pivotal in terms of me ascending into the current role that I'm at today.
Now, as CEO, what keeps you up at night? Is there something particular? Is it the company balance sheet, as you mentioned, or something else?
We are in a consumer business, and consumer preferences are evolving at a very fast pace. But we are a hard asset company. And so how do we stay ahead of the trends that are happening with consumers and make the changes that we need to make today and make those decisions, and hopefully they hold 5, 7 years from now, despite the fact that consumer trends are changing at a fast pace. And so I worry about the assets that we own, the decisions that we're making from a renovation perspective, because we're in the lodging space. Every day I have to convince consumers to come to our hotels. And so what we do from an investment perspective every day affects us, and it's going to affect us for 5 years from now, because I can't invest in a hotel today and then put more money into that same asset a year from now. And so marrying up consumer trends with the hard assets that we have is something I think about on a constant basis, and it affects every aspect of the business. The other thing that keeps me up at night is that I take my role from a leadership perspective very serious. And I know the decisions that I make and that we make as a leadership team affect our associates, that's our livelihoods. And so I think about that, and I take it very serious from the standpoint of, are we making the right decisions for the business, short-term and long-term?
I'd like to follow up on that consumer focus on the hospitality industry and the onset of Airbnb and Bookit.com and all these other options that consumers now have. How does it or does it not play into your thinking?
It absolutely does. Those items that you mentioned are here to stay, and so it very much affects our business. They are threats and they are disruptors, and something we have to absolutely pay attention to, because they affect our pricing power. And so our ability to get to the same top-line growth that we've had in the past is permanently impaired. And so we have to think about what assets we buy, where we buy them, what we invest in, fundamentally different today than we did 3, 7, 4, or 5 years ago. The paradigm has completely shifted. We haven't seen a full cycle yet of what that new paradigm looks like, and so we're still learning as we grow.
I read in a Business Journal profile that said your biggest work goal for 2019 was to achieve a good balance between spending time with your family and committing to your business success. How successful have you been?
So my first year was really dedicated to making sure the ship was upright. And so that goal slipped a little bit. But once I crossed over my first year, I really started to think about, how do I balance those two? Because it is important. I do have 4 children. My youngest is 2, my oldest is 11. And making sure that I have quality time with them is important. So I've been actually pretty good in the last couple of months in terms of putting boundaries and trying to keep that. And it reminds me why organizations like Crew are super important as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.